decision to actually remove the hospital from the university. Looking at the structure and the inception of that facility, Mr. Speaker, it was the university's initiative to actually design, build, and develop a research, teaching, and referral hospital for purposes of training. Mr. Speaker, it is even more surprising that the board of the hospital can actually decide to outsource lecture halls that were meant for training, laboratories that were meant for training, lecture halls that were meant for training, just to collect rent. How desperate is this hospital to raise revenue to the extent of leasing out laboratories, leasing out lecture halls, so that students can miss that opportunity? Mr. Speaker, medical schools undergo regular inspections to make sure that the quality of training that is being given to these doctors meets the national and international standard for doctors to qualify. The training of these students is at risk of being discontinued if inspections are carried out and found that their training facilities or whatever they're using for training doesn't meet the set standards that are meant for training doctors. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this is an urgent matter, and I think the committee where the matter will be referred to, Mr. Speaker, will benefit a lot from what National Assembly. I'm also surprised that this is a matter that had already been canvassed at the National Assembly, but it looks like the ministry never bothered to take any action. Mr. Speaker, I've read parts of this petition, and it is even also more surprising that even the Vice Chancellor of that university does not sit in the board of that hospital. How do we have a facility within a facility and the owners of the facility are not allowed to even participate in the process? Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues have said, there are things that are common sense, but I think these days common sense is no longer common sense. We just have to be decisive as a house in handling this matter. And I think as Senate being the upper house, I think we have a responsibility of restoring common sense in this country. And this is one matter that we have to take seriously and demonstrate to the nation that we have common sense in this Senate so that these students can get opportunity to train in a facility consumerate to where other student doctors are being trained in this country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I therefore support this petition. And as the committee will look at this, we are also asking that they also look at those who are involved in the decision so that appropriate action is also taken to deter others who might in future want to engage in such acts, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this petition.
Senator Oburu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also want to add my voice to those who have spoken on this petition before. Mr. Speaker, it is very sad that this matter is taking too long when, in my view, Mr. Speaker, this should have been done very, very long time ago, because if it was already canvassed in the National Assembly and it is still coming to the Senate more than a year later, Mr. Speaker, this is something which means there is some laxity somewhere. And I hope that Honorable Chariot there and Cherargei, who is always very fast, please, instead of increasing prices of things very fast like fuel and so on, take up this matter. Take up this matter and deal with it before it takes too long. Students are suffering. And you know it, that in Eldoret, that is where all our people, even from Bondo, from everywhere, that's where they go. We go to Eldoret, the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. That is the best hospital in the whole of the Western region. This is because it is attached to the university, which is doing research, and they are also using their expertise and from the professors there and the students who are learning and also helping to work there. So actually it is another very big advantage for an hospital or for a university, for an hospital to be attached to a university. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is something which we should take very seriously. It is something which I think more of the other side, please help us so that this matter does not take too long being passed here, taken to committee, taken to what, and yet it is something which is a simple policy, which you should just change, revoke that gazettement of that parastatal there, and let the hospital be attached to the university the way other hospitals, even the Kenyatta National Hospital here, is attached, together with the University of Nairobi, and it is working very well. And Mr. Speaker, I really get surprised that these days, these hospitals, which are supposed to be, public hospitals, have become much, much worse than private hospitals. People prefer to go to private hospitals. But, Mr. Speaker, during colonial times, public institutions like hospitals, hospitals were functioning much better than private hospitals. And people were going to public hospitals instead of the private hospitals. But now, these days, if you are going to public hospital, people say, but how could colonialists be better than us? Mr. Speaker, this is something which is really surprising. Even public schools used to be better than private schools. Mr. Speaker, there is something wrong which we have to look at. I think in those days, if you went to, it was called King George VI Hospital, it was much better than these private hospitals like Nairobi Hospital. Now people have to go to private hospitals. And I hope these university hospitals will take the lead to help us to come back, to make public hospitals better than private hospitals, like the Eldoret one is doing. It is already taking a lead. And let this one also at Kenyatta serve students and also serve members of the public as efficiently. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, the 30 minutes period meant for intervention is well spent, and therefore pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, the petition is hereby committed to the Standing Committee on Health for its consideration. In terms of Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer to respond to the petitioners by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. Honorable Senators, before we move to the second petition, I have this communication to make. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon, visiting teachers and students from Albright Junior School, Nairobi County. The group comprises 3 teachers and 12 students from the Journalism Club who are in the Senate for a one-day academic exposition. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate, on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I will allow the Senator for Nairobi just 1 minute to make very brief welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me opportunity to welcome the students of Albright to the Senate. And on behalf of my colleagues and on behalf of the entire House, to wish them a fruitful visit of the Senate. You've said that they are members of the Journalism Club. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we have had conversations in my office following a request that came from one of the schools, Huruma Girls, to support the journalism clubs in public schools in Nairobi. And as I speak today, we are at a very advanced stage with one of the leading global manufacturers of audiovisual equipment. to actually support drama and communication clubs, art clubs in many of the schools in Nairobi. I am sure that if the teachers of Albright were to say the right things, there would be no problem for me including them in this program, although it was targeted at public schools, so that we are able to grow the talent in the school and hope that we can have very serious future journalists, news reporters, and all the others from this particular school. Mr. Speaker, as they might understand, the press, journalism, are one of the four pillars of democracy, Mr. Speaker, and that we need them. We need to see new practitioners in journalism. That is an essential cog in protection of our democracy every day, because it shines light on everything that we do, especially as elected leaders here. Even as we are in this chamber, you can see this is the parliamentary broadcast service, so that everything we say here is actually seen by the citizens out there. And you can confirm, as citizens of Embakasi, that the things that I am saying here are the things that you've sent me. So I want to thank them for this visit, and I wish them a successful visit, and I hope that we will be seeing some big names in media coming from Albright. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The second petition is by Senator Mariam Sheikh Omar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A petition to the Senate by President of Choka concerning illegal demolition of the house by Kenya Power and Lighting Company in Choka, Miango area. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 232(1)B, I hereby present to the Senate a petition submitted by residents of Choka, Miango area who are citizens of Kenya, citizen of Republic of Kenya, and resident of Nairobi County. As you are aware, under Article 119, Section 1 of the Constitution, I quote, every person has a right to a petition Parliament to consider any matters within its authority, including enacting, amending, repealing any legislation. Mr. Speaker, the silence issue raised in this petition are as follows: that on 19th April 2019, Kenya Power and Lighting demolished houses in Choka, Mihango area of Embakasi East constituency and argues that the houses were in the Power Way Leave corridor. Mr. Speaker, that through multi-sectorial agency, consultative committee comprised of NEMA, KURA, NCA, WRA, Nairobi, KPLC, Kenya Railways, Nairobi City County Government, National Police Services, KAA, NYS, NDMU, and other agencies, KPLC demolished homes of residents and therefore subjecting them to emotional torture, stress, ridicule, and embarrassment. Mr. Speaker, that despite the President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, suspend the notice of demolition, which was due on 24 December 2018, KPLC ignored the presidential order and proceed to demolish the properties. That the residents were the legal properties of the plot at Injiru Mihango of Kagundu Road in Nairobi County. At no point did the KPLC communicated with the residents to resolve any issues of claimed encroachment to the Power Way Leave corridor. Mr. Speaker, as a result of illegal demolitions, nearly 500 families were rendered homeless, with children forced to close the schools earlier because their schools and the residence has been destroyed. Some residents also lost their livelihood since their business has been demolished. It is also worthy noting that one of the residents committed suicide as a result of frustration, trauma, and shock created by illegal demolitions. Mr. Speaker, that after completing a due diligence search at the survey of Kenya, the homeowners determined that KPLC did not possess the dispute land. As a result, demolitions were carried out in a bad faith, in violation of the residents' the fundamental right to housing and in contraventions of the country's Vision 2020-2030 of affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, that following demolitions, KPLC beacon the area, which was afterthought and complete violation of enacted regulations. The disputed plot has since remained vacant, with possibility of being sold to the third party to the pursuit of demolition victims who have experienced emotional losses and emotional torments, worry, and disgrace. Mr. Speaker, the issue presented in this petition has been raised with relevant bodies but have not been adequately addressed. Mr. Speaker, none of the issues raised in these petitions are pending before any court of law, constitutionally, or any other legal body. Mr. Speaker, consequently, the petitioners pray that Senate investigate this matter with a view of ensuring that the victims are resettled and adequately compensated by KPLC. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I will allow Senator Wakili Sigei to present his petition. Thereafter, I will allow interventions on both petitions so that we save on time. Senator Sigei.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for also granting me the opportunity to present the petition that I have been authorized by a resident and citizen of this country to present it on his behalf pursuant to Standing Order 232 of this Senate. Mr. Speaker, the petition respectfully states that Kenya Breweries Limited is one of the oldest public listed companies in Kenya, having been established in the year 1922, that there has been a controversial majority acquisition of East African Breweries by Guinness PLC in 2000, which was strongly resisted by the people of the Republic of Kenya through the Parliament, that despite having knowledge of the dealings of the Capital Markets Authority, Kenya Revenue Authority, the National Treasury, and East African Breweries Limited have since not acted so as to correct or stop the fraudulent activities relating to shareholding and the illegal acquisitions. To that effect, some of the backlash Guinness PLC made a pledge to cede back most of the acquired shares to Kenyans in due course. That incomplete and total betrayal of this undertaking, Diageo PLC has now purported to acquire additional 15% shares in EABL. That the undertaking by Guinness PLC to cede back shares is actionable through a class action. That the recent acquisition of the extra 15% shares in EABL is a fraud upon the people of Kenya, as the shares are being acquired for an onward transfer to a new buyer at a much higher value for the benefit of the shareholders and to the detriment of Kenyan shareholders who will be denied the benefit of the higher price that will onward be obtained. An onward sale has been agreed with another company, and the purpose and purchase of the additional 15% shares is meant to assure the purchaser of a controlling stake in EABL after the onward sale. That the sale of the shares has been prompted by the desire by the fraudulent purchaser to evade huge tax liabilities that has been hiding through massive processes within the systems. That Kenya Breweries Limited, when it was locally owned, possessed massive real estate in Kenya that comprised staff houses, staff complexes, godowns and warehouses, factories and other assets, and had employed over 6,000 Kenyans. That EABL has corruptly disposed of all these properties and repatriated the sale proceeds, and is now but a mere shell, employing a paltry 600 employees. That having sold all these properties, the new scheme is to quickly progress the sale and block the benefit that the Kenyans ought to have benefited. That the overall impact of these continued contrived corporate actions is a serious betrayal of the interest of the people of Kenya, and a parliamentary hearing is urgently required to interrogate these events and to secure the public interest of Kenya and its people. That the petitioner has made efforts to have this matter addressed to the relevant authorities, all of which have been unsuccessful, and that this matter is confirmed not to be pending before any court of law or any constitutional body. Herefore, your humble petitioner prays that the Senate investigates with a view to recommending amendments to the CMA Act to cushion the shareholders from such future manipulations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I shall now allow comments, observations, or clarifications on the two petitions for not more than 30 minutes. The Honorable Cheranke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support the petition by Senator Sheikh Omar on behalf of Mihango residents, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you look under Article 40 on protection to right to property and under Article 43 on adequate housing, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is very unfortunate that Kenya Power and Lighting Company went ahead with demolitions without proper recourse of the law. And even if they wanted to acquire that part of the property, Mr. Speaker, they should have at least ensured that the people are compensated, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you remember during lockdown and COVID, there were residents that were affected in the middle of lockdown. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I continue to insist that we have a new form of evictees. We used to hear about forest evictees. We used to hear about political evictees. Mr. Speaker, there is new crop of evictees called infrastructural evictees, especially in our cities and our towns, Mr. Speaker, where an entity wakes up in the morning, they demolish the kiosks, they demolish people's houses. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think the great people of Mihango who lost their houses, Mr. Speaker, somebody must be held accountable, Mr. Speaker, because if they did violate the law, then it is very unfortunate that those people of Mihango residents here in Embakasi East, Mr. Speaker, in Nairobi City continues. Mr. Speaker, second and finally, I think it has reached a point where as a parliament, we must come up with the proper legislative intervention to guide demolitions, Mr. Speaker, be it the kiosks, be it the houses, either for the expansion of road reserves, Mr. Speaker, either for compulsory acquisition. We must have a structural legal framework, Mr. Speaker, because what happens nowadays, somebody rushes to court, they obtain a court order, they talk to the OCS and OCPD, they facilitate some young men here and there, facilitate the police, you are evicted without the proper legal recourse of the law, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I commend Senator Sheikh Omar for bringing this petition before the House. I hope the great people of Mihango, I've had, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I've had one of your speakers panel's member alluding on the floor of the House that there is no money. I don't know whether it is above you to know whether the Senate or Parliament has money, but that is a story for another day. I hope this since Mihango, Mr. Speaker, is a walking distance. And I know Senator Sifuna, in the last month, we used to see him rushing like a bullet across the streets of Nairobi. He can be able to lead us to Mihango because, he has been rehearsing, running here and there, Mr. Speaker, so that it becomes easy. But I want, Mr. Speaker, my senior youth and my friend Senator Oburu acknowledges there is government in place, and I hope Senator Sifuna is borrowing such Solomonic wisdom from Senator Oburu, who is a very senior citizen in this republic, Mr. Speaker. So with those very, very remarks, I support this petition and hope we shall have a policy and legislative intervention as the outcome of policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to comment on the petition on eviction and say that when evictions happen, sometimes they are fraudulent evictions. People go to court, they obtain a judgment ex parte or a ruling, and at times pretend that they can evict. And if you are not quick enough, the events end up being very sadistic. And again, by the time you go back to court, you have already been overtaken by the situation. And Mr. Speaker, this is something the Senate should take very seriously because the government is talking about housing, yet houses which are constructed, including a school, are demolished and the community is left helplessly. There are a section of civil servants who are very malicious. Despite the matter be explained to then head of state and him giving direction that they hold on while they process to know whether the wayleave is real or not. Because you see, this is a matter of lands and it can be verified and there can be wrong allocations. The question is, after Kenya Power took over this land, what is there in that land today? Have they done developments which are designed? Is it for the benefit of community? Or some other individuals have now gone on to grab the same land and end up owning it? Mr. Speaker, this has been an experience not only in this particular place, but many other places. People are evicted without proper notice. There must always be a notice before eviction, and there must be proper court orders when necessary. And the police, which is near there, should also be able to protect such properties. When residents report, they have the capacity to stop before anybody goes on to disturb the peace of peace-loving Kenyans. And the damage caused then is very enormous. I'm surprised that eventually the matter has ended up in the Senate. But why have these human rights organizations not taken action for all these years? Why have they not been in the court? Why has the government also not taken action to restore? I think it's a matter Senate can resolve. It is within its mandate. And Mr. Speaker, we really look forward to assist the committee dealing with it to make sure that justice is done to these people. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Tabitha Mutende.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to rise and support Senator Mariam on the petition at Mihango. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to state that Mihango is actually my voting place. That's where I vote, in Embakasi East, more precise, Mihango Primary. So it's an area I'm very familiar with. These issues of residents being, or owners being evicted from residence is not new in this particular area, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy that she has put this across because it is very wrong for anybody, as much as it's the government organization, to evict families, hence loss of property and loss of lives for these people. Mr. Speaker, allow me to agree that March 2018, on the 15th, KPLC launched what we call Ondokea Laini. This was to ensure that people who are living under the wayleaves get out of these particular areas, Mr. Speaker. Then we ask, Mr. Speaker, why do we have wayleaves under